She was 21 years old. Her name was Elisa Lam. She was from Vancouver, Canada, a university student, a reader, a blogger who wrote honestly about depression and books and the specific loneliness of being a person who thinks too much. She had saved for months for this trip, a solo journey down the West Coast, San Diego, Los Angeles, Santa Cruz. She had photographed the zoo in San Diego, written about the light there, posted it on her blog. On January 26, 2013, she checked into a hotel in downtown Los Angeles. She chose it because it was cheap, because it was central, because it called itself Stay on Main and had rebranded itself with fresh paint and a hostel atmosphere for young travelers. She did not know its other name. She did not know its history. She walked through the door of the Cecil Hotel. The Cecil Hotel had been built in 1927 in an era when downtown Los Angeles was glamorous. By the 1950s, the glamour had gone and something else had moved in. The hotel became known, not in the press, not in guidebooks, but in the way that certain buildings become known, as a place where things happened. Suicides, murders, disappearances. A woman named Goldie Osgood was found stabbed in her room in 1964. The case was never solved. A man named Richard Ramirez, the Night Stalker, one of the most prolific serial killers in California history, lived there for months in 1985 while he was killing. Jack Unterweger, an Austrian serial killer who had convinced European intellectuals he had reformed, stayed there in 1991 while murdering 3 women in Los Angeles. They called it the Suicide Hotel. Locals knew. The police knew. Elisa Lam did not know. She checked in on January 26th. For the first 2 days, she shared a room with other travelers. Then, the hotel moved her. They gave her a private room, room 504, because of what they described as odd behavior. The details of what that behavior was have never been made fully public. On January 31st, 2013, her parents stopped hearing from her. She had called them every single day of her trip. The silence was immediate and total. They called the police. The police searched the hotel. They brought dogs. They found nothing. Her wallet was in the room. Her ID was in the room. Her medication was in the room. Her laptop was in the room. Elisa Lam was not. Two weeks passed. The police had no leads, no witnesses, no trace. On February 13th, they released a video. It was surveillance footage from one of the Cecil Hotel's elevators, dated January 31st, the last day anyone saw Elisa Lam. The footage is approximately 2.5 minutes long. The LAPD released it, hoping someone would recognize her or come forward with information. Instead, it went viral. Within days, millions of people had watched it. Within weeks, it had become the most discussed piece of surveillance footage in internet history. It spawned Reddit threads that ran for years, YouTube videos with tens of millions of views, podcast episodes, academic papers. It is still being discussed today. Let me describe it to you exactly. Elisa Lam enters the elevator wearing a red hoodie and dark trousers. She presses several floor buttons. The elevator does not move. She steps out into the hallway, looks to the left, steps back in, looks to the right, steps back in. She presses more buttons. The elevator still does not move. She steps out again. She moves to the left of the doorway, just outside the elevator where the camera cannot quite see her. She stays there. She re-enters the elevator. Her hands are moving, not randomly, not involuntarily. They are moving in a specific way, fingers spread, wrists rotating, as if she is describing something in a language made of gestures. She appears to be speaking. Her lips are moving, but she is alone. The elevator doors, which have been standing open throughout all of this, now close, without her. The elevator moves. Elisa Lam is gone from the frame. The internet's reaction was immediate and overwhelming. People watched the footage and concluded she was communicating with someone invisible, someone supernatural. The movements of her hands, those specific, deliberate gestures, looked like something. They looked intentional. They looked like a conversation. The elevator doors standing open for so long without closing became evidence. The camera's timestamp was analysed and found to be slightly inconsistent. Amateur investigators concluded the footage had been edited, that minutes were missing. The game Elevator Game circulated online, a supernatural ritual involving pressing specific floor buttons in a specific order. A horror film titled The Vanishing at the Cecil Hotel began being planned. A Korean pop group released a music video that appeared to reference her death. The internet had decided what had happened. The internet was not doing Elisa Lam justice, because here is what the actual analysis shows. The elevator at the Cecil Hotel was equipped with a hold function, a feature that keeps the doors open when someone is pressing a button inside. Elisa had pressed multiple buttons simultaneously, triggering this function. The doors were not held open by something supernatural. They were held open by a building system responding to her inputs exactly as designed. The timestamp discrepancy existed because the footage had been slightly slowed for clarity before release, standard practice in video evidence. No minutes were missing. The hand gestures, in the light of what investigators would later learn about her medical history and the state of her medication, are consistent with a specific kind of mental health episode. But none of this explains where she went. 19 days after Elisa Lam was last seen, guests at the Cecil Hotel began complaining about the water. It tasted strange. It was darker than usual. The pressure was low. On February 19th, a maintenance worker named Santiago Lopez climbed to the roof to check the water tanks. And he found there something that no one expected. Rooftop held 4 large industrial water tanks, metal cylinders, approximately 2.5 meters tall by 1.5 meters wide. They provided water to the entire hotel. Guests drank from them. They showered in them. The hotel served them. Santiago Lopez climbed the ladder to the nearest tank. The hatch was open. He looked inside. Elisa Lam's body was floating face up in the water. She was unclothed. Her clothing, the red hoodie, the dark trousers, was floating beside her, along with her room key and her watch. The clothing was coated in a fine sand-like particulate. Her body showed significant decomposition. She had been in the water for weeks. Santiago Lopez climbed down and called the police. The coroner's investigation began, and almost immediately, questions began to accumulate. The first question, how did she get there? The rooftop of the Cecil Hotel was accessed through a door from the 14th floor, the highest residential floor. That door was alarmed. Hotel management stated that the alarm would have triggered if anyone had opened it. No alarm had triggered on the night of January 31st. There was also a fire escape that could theoretically be accessed from lower floors, but it would have required significant physical effort and knowledge of the building's layout. The police concluded she had accessed the rooftop through the alarm doors. How the alarm had not triggered, or whether it had and was ignored, was not resolved in the public record. The second question, the tank. The water tank's hatch was found open when Lopez arrived. Multiple sources, including the coroner's report and a court deposition from Lopez, confirm the hatch was open, not locked. This contradicts a persistent myth that it was sealed. However, the hatch was heavy. It was designed to close by gravity. To hold it open while climbing in would require either propping it open with an object, no such object was found, or holding it open while lowering oneself into the tank. The tank was 2.5 meters deep. Once inside, with the hatch closed by gravity above you, there is no way out. The third question, her clothing. Elisa Lam was found unclothed, but her clothes were in the tank with her. The coroner's report noted that victims of drowning in cold water sometimes remove their clothing, a phenomenon called paradoxical undressing, associated with severe hypothermia. The body, in extreme cold, experiences a sudden sensation of intense heat, and the instinct to remove clothing follows. This explanation is medically documented. It is also deeply disturbing to contemplate. The autopsy found no signs of physical trauma, no signs of sexual assault, no evidence that anyone had touched her, no evidence of a struggle. The toxicology report found no illegal drugs in her system, no alcohol. It found her prescription medications, antidepressants, mood stabilizers prescribed for her bipolar disorder. But the levels were lower than expected, significantly lower. The medication detail is where this case pivots, because it changes everything about what we think we see in that elevator footage. And it raises a question about what was happening to Elisa Lam in the days before she died that no one at the Cecil Hotel noticed or reported. Elisa Lam had been diagnosed with bipolar disorder. She had been hospitalized for it. She managed it with medication, several medications, including Wellbutrin, lamotrigine, and quetiapine. These are serious drugs. They are prescribed because the condition requires them to function. The toxicology report found those medications in her system, but the levels were low. Importantly, one medication in particular, quetiapine, an antipsychotic used as a mood stabilizer, was either absent or at a very low level. Quetiapine has a short half-life. This means that if you miss 1 or 2 doses, it disappears from your bloodstream relatively quickly. And the consequences of stopping quetiapine abruptly, not gradually, not under medical supervision, but suddenly, are documented and severe. They include disorganized thinking, paranoia, visual disturbances, auditory hallucinations, manic episodes in which the patient may behave in ways that appear to an observer entirely irrational, but which have an internal logic that the patient is following completely. Look at the elevator footage again with this information. She is not hiding from something supernatural. She may be hiding from something she believes is real, because in that moment, to her, it is real. The gestures she makes with her hands. She is not communicating with a ghost. She may be communicating with what her brain is producing. The movements are deliberate and purposeful because to her, they are. She is not acting strangely. She is experiencing something. What we do not know is what happened in the days before January 31st. The hotel moved her from a shared room to a private room because of odd behavior. What was that behavior? What did the other guests in her room report? What did the hotel staff see? None of this has been made fully public. The hotel's records from those days were not released. The staff members who dealt with her were not extensively interviewed on the record. A 21-year-old woman was exhibiting signs of a mental health crisis in a hotel, and the response was to move her to a private room and leave her there. The blog she kept, Nouvelle Nouveau, had been her companion through her illness for years. She wrote about depression with unusual honesty. She wrote about the specific terror of not trusting your own mind. She wrote about what it felt like to be medicated and what it felt like not to be. Her final blog posts, written during the trip, were different, lighter, hopeful. She wrote about the possibility of change, about feeling, for the first time in a long time, like things might be different. These posts are often cited by people who want to argue she was fine, that the medication was not the issue. But those of us who have watched someone with bipolar disorder know that the days of hopeful lightness, the days when the world suddenly seems manageable and beautiful, can also be the first sign that the balance has shifted in a dangerous direction, that the lightness is not recovery, that it is the other edge of the blade. The coroner ruled accidental drowning, bipolar disorder listed as a significant contributing condition. The case was closed in June 2013. But there is one fact that the official verdict does not address, one detail that the coroner's report does not explain, one question that, 11 years later, no one has been able to answer satisfactorily. And it is the simplest question of all. How did she close the hatch? That is the question. It is the only question, in the end. Everything else, the elevator footage, the medication, the history of the hotel, the internet's theories, everything else is secondary to this one physical fact. The hatch on the water tank was designed to close by gravity. It was heavy. It sealed the tank when closed. When Santiago Lopez arrived, it was open, propped, or left that way. But between the time Elisa Lam entered the tank and the time her body was found, 18 days had passed. The hatch's position at discovery does not tell us its position in the hours after she entered. The official theory requires us to believe that Elisa Lam, in a state of psychiatric crisis, climbed a ladder to the roof of a building, navigated to a specific water tank, climbed a ladder on the side of the tank, opened the heavy hatch, lowered herself into water in an enclosed metal cylinder 2.5 meters deep, and that the hatch then closed by gravity, sealing her inside. The forensic pathologist who reviewed the case for the coroner stated that the official version was consistent with what the evidence showed. He also stated that the investigation had access to information not made available to the public, information about her mental state, her recent behavior, her history, that informed the conclusion. The problem is that the public cannot evaluate information it cannot see. What we can evaluate is this. The hotel had a history of negligence toward vulnerable guests. Elisa Lam had been exhibiting signs of a crisis for at least several days before she disappeared. She was moved to an isolated room. The alarmed roof door may or may not have triggered. The staff saw something and did not act. None of that is evidence of murder. All of it is evidence of a failure. The kind of failure that does not make the news because it is not dramatic. Because it is just the quiet collapse of the systems that are supposed to catch people before they fall. And then there is the detail that I keep returning to. 11 days before Elisa Lam disappeared, a tuberculosis outbreak was confirmed in Skid Row, the neighborhood immediately surrounding the Cecil Hotel. The test used to screen for tuberculosis in that outbreak was called LAM ELISA. That is not a typo. LAM ELISA, named for the protein it detects. An acronym that had existed for years before Elisa Lam was born. It means nothing. It is a coincidence. The test was not named for her, will never be named for her, has no connection to her death whatsoever. And yet, the internet found it. Of course, the internet found it. And for a certain kind of mind, the kind of mind that wants the world to have a pattern, that cannot tolerate the possibility that terrible things happen to specific people for no reason connected to their name or their nature. For that kind of mind, this coincidence became evidence of what exactly was never specified, but of something. I understand the impulse. I do. It is easier to believe that the universe is cruel and deliberate than that it is simply indifferent. Elisa Lam was 21 years old. She had saved for months to take a trip she had always wanted to take. She was a person who read books and wrote honestly about her pain and tried to get better. She walked into a hotel that had a long history of not being safe for vulnerable people. She was not given adequate support when she needed it. She died in a way that is, under the official explanation, tragic and accidental and preventable. The internet turned her into a mystery, a symbol, a piece of content. Amateur investigators picked apart her blog posts looking for clues. They contacted her family with theories. They made videos that monetized her death. They turned the specific, particular grief of her parents, two people in Vancouver who had lost their daughter, into a genre. This episode is part of that genre. I know that. I cannot pretend otherwise. What I can do is this. I can tell you that the question I started with, how did she close the hatch, does not have a satisfying answer. I can tell you that the official verdict is the most evidence-consistent explanation we have, and that it is deeply unsatisfying. I can tell you that a young woman with a mental illness was failed by the systems around her, and that no official verdict has held any of those systems accountable. And I can tell you that her name was Elisa Lam, not the elevator girl, not a mystery, not content. Elisa Lam, from Vancouver, 21 years old. She liked books. She was trying to get better. That is what I have. I am Inspector Morrow, and the file remains open. If the darkness suits you, stay. Press subscribe. More cases, more questions, more nights with no clean answers.